Rimworld, oh Rimworld. Rimworld, developed, published, and officially released in 2018 by Ludeon Studios, is a fantastic video game.
I said specifically and explicitly that Rimworld is not a game. It's not a game. Rimworld is not a game. And I have to keep repeating it, and I have for you.
Sorry, Tynan. Fantastic story generator. Basically, it's a colony sim where you control a number of colonists, also known as pawns, from a top-down perspective, acting as the unseen hand of God that dictates pretty much everything about their existence. You tell them what to build, where to sleep, what to hunt, what to wear, and who to fight. While highly influenced by a little game called Dwarf Fortress, a more recognizable point of comparison is probably The Sims. Your pawns have wants and needs of their own, and will act accordingly to fulfill these needs. Like real humans, the things they need most are food, shelter, and a table to eat at. After that, we can start taking care of their other needs. Do they have a place to relax? Are they idle and need work? Is the room they're working in too hot, making them upset and likely to have a mental break? There are so many different details being simulated in Rimworld, both big and small, which results in untold amounts of emergent gameplay. I made the mistake earlier of calling Rimworld a game, which wasn't really a mistake. It is a game, but it's marketed as a story generator. This is less a hard and fast definition of the game, but the philosophy behind it. It's a game about generating stories. In most games, if one plays suboptimally for too long, they might restart or load an earlier save to reach a more optimal outcome. But Rimworld actively pushes you to play through the tragedy. Losing your favourite pawn should hurt because you are attached to them, not because you will lose access to their skills. It's the end of their story, but it makes room for another pawn to take the stage and tell theirs. Rimworld has been around in early access since 2013, so I figure most management sim nuts have already gone deep on it. When I first heard of it, just the very idea of a game like this took my hand and clicked the buy button. I didn't need any review to tell me I wanted it. So in a way, I don't really know who this review is for. But if you are on the fence and are still watching, or you just want to hear someone gush about their favourite game, I invite you to stay a while and listen about my experiences in the Rim. Rimworld is a story-light game, but I'd wager that even people with hundreds of hours might still be unaware of the story in the background. In this universe, the humans of Earth have figured out and commercialized travel between the stars, freely sending people throughout the universe to do whatever they please. The catch is, no one figured out faster than light travel. Stepping aboard the ship to the stars is most likely a one-way trip. As travel can take many years, this means that anyone taking the trip needs to be put into crypto-sleep. This goes for information too, with it taking years just to deliver a message from one planet to another. This lack of communication between worlds and civilizations means there are vast differences in technology depending on where you are. Of course, the wealthiest of the wealthy are able to travel with purpose and be able to reach their destination, but in the default starting scenario of Rimworld, this is not the case. A group of 3 travelers have crash-landed on a Rimworld in the farthest reaches of space, and with nothing but what was in their drop pods, means they're gonna have to make a home of it. Your group aren't the only ones on the planet though. There are other tribes and factions of which will either want to trade with or raid your settlement. It is up to you to build a base of sorts where your pawns will be able to live out their days for as long as it takes for you to build your own spaceship to escape this strange alien world. To do that, you'll need to keep your pawns safe and happy enough for them to research their way to building a spaceship in the first place. This is the meat of Rimworld. Depending on what difficulty you play at, this can be an incredibly difficult task that can be still swept away at any moment by the harsh realities of the Rim. I now have over 250 hours in the game and haven't come remotely close to building the ship. In fact, this is the first game I reviewed that I haven't seen the credits for. To me, that doesn't matter though. This, more than any other game I've played, is about the journey rather than the destination. Rimworld is a game that is pretty resistant to reviewing. There are so many systems at play here, but your main way of interacting with the game is flicking through menus, which doesn't sound all that interesting. I think the best way to talk about the gameplay of Rimworld is to break down how my average game goes. Something I should mention is how Rimworld handles difficulty and quote-unquote storytelling. Before you even start generating your world, you will have to pick a storyteller. There are 3 included with the game, each representing different styles of play. One storyteller is more about sending you consistent challenges, making sure that you will always have a problem to overcome on a set of invisible timers. The next is quite similar but offers more breathing room between events. The final storyteller, for the most part, is completely random. Sometimes you'll go real life hours without much of note happening, and sometimes you'll get 3 groups of raiders invading your base at once, while at the same time trying to deal with a malaria outbreak at your hospital. This random storyteller is the only one I've ever used, as I don't think balance is something you should be worrying about when you play this game. You'll also have to decide whether you'll play with unlimited saves or what is known as commitment mode, which is a single save mode. Both the developer and I recommend playing the game in commitment mode. While being able to reload at any time is certainly nice for keeping your colony alive and well, it's pretty shitty for telling stories. How many stories have you read where everything was perfect and nothing ever went wrong? Sometimes I hear the complaint that this game can be boring, and I'd wager 9 out of 10 times if you asked that person, they'd say they were reloading whenever something bad happened. This isn't a game about winning or losing, and for that reason, without the balance of the two, you're robbing yourself of the interesting stories that could be told if you had just played out the situation. The next thing you'll be doing is choosing an embark location. Where will your base be? The planet is home to a number of different biomes, each hosting their own myriad of gameplay challenges. For example, playing in a desert is going to have harsher challenges than playing in a nice, temperate forest. It'll be hotter summers and harsher winters, the animals more dangerous, and there will be little, if any, area for you to grow crops. Your chosen embark location will influence both the theme of your colony and the difficulty of your start, so pick carefully but experiment often. The other thing you'll need to do is choose what pawns you'll be starting off with. As I mentioned earlier, Rimworld simulates a lot of things. They'll all have their individual backgrounds, which will influence their skill values and traits. All pawns are graded at their effectiveness for skills, for example, shooting, cooking, or doctoring. Pawns can also have traits that will affect their behaviour, such as pyromaniac, greedy, or gourmand. On top of all this is their medical condition when they land on the rim. For example, they could be missing a leg, affecting their walking speed. They could have dementia, making them randomly wander around in dazes, or a drug addiction that, if not managed, could spell disaster for the colony. If this sounds like a lot already, that's because it is. You are not able to fine-tune details about your pawns, so your only option is to keep hitting the randomize button until you get a pawn that suits you. Pawns are generated using a point system, meaning that if they have exceptionally high stats, there needs to be something to balance that point-wise. They might have a debilitating medical condition or an undesirable social trait. The inability to manually edit your pawns is an artificial restriction that, frankly speaking, shouldn't be a thing. It does serve a purpose though. It enforces a sense of compromise on each and every run that you start. There is no perfect team to start with. Rolling for stats is a tedious process, and thus is the game encouraging you to just roll with the hand you're given, which is a central theme at the core of the game. A lot of the fun of Rimworld is figuring out ways to outsmart your situation. There are several different starting scenarios in base game Rimworld, as well as custom ones you can make yourself or download from others. This is stuff like how many pawns you'll start with, what they'll start off with, and what level of technology they'll be at. For example, the Wealthy Explorer scenario starts you off with 1 pawn and great starting items, whereas the default start gives you 3 pawns but modest starting equipment. Your crew is now landed and you're finally in the game proper. The world and pawn creation are daunting tasks, so congratulations for making it this far. The first thing you're going to want to do is lay down some shelter and beds for your colonist. Then you'll need to sort out ways to keep your pawns reliably fed. This can be achieved through either setting up some grow zones for crops, hunting, or raising animals of your own in a pen. There are a couple dozen different kinds of animals in Rimworld, and they can serve different purposes. Chickens will provide eggs, sheep can provide wool, and dogs can be trained in a number of skills. You can do whatever you want in this regard, either being full rancher or pure farmer, maybe a blend of both, as long as you're putting food on the table. The building interface is pretty simple to use and I don't have much to say about it. The game is entirely grid-based, so everything kind of has this blocky look to it, but that just means getting creative so one base doesn't look exactly like your last. I've found over the years my build style has changed dramatically, and one of the reasons for this is something called colony wealth. Your colony wealth is pretty much what it sounds like, the total wealth of your colony. This includes everything that you own, from individual items to your walls. Even your pawns themselves have a value tied to them, and this all makes up your colony wealth. This wealth is the determining factor on how big the raids on your colony will be. The more wealth, the more the others will want a piece of it, the more firepower you'll need to defend it. This was a common trap for me for so long. I'd build up these super bases, only to be destroyed in a single raid of like 30 pigmen. While this is just another thing to manage on a long list, it is the most insidious of run-enders, so keep an eye on this while playing. There is combat in Rimworld, and you will take direct control of your pawns while doing so. You don't have a lot of input in the combat, but mainly the circumstances surrounding it. Stuff like what they're equipped with, what defensive measures you have, using performance-enhancing drugs, that kind of stuff. All you will be doing is telling your pawns where to stand and what to shoot, but they will pick targets on their own. There is also a bit of kiting involved, which to be honest isn't the most fun thing in the world. Your little dudes will then shoot and stab at each other, with each attack having a dice roll behind it, determining how effective that attack was. These dice rolls create some tense moments, especially in commitment mode as there's no plot armor for your pawns. It can feel pretty unfair at times, with even your best shooter often missing their shots and fully armored pawns dying in one stab, but I imagine stuff like this is difficult to balance and simulate at the same time. Well, I feel like I've given a lot of examples of what kind of things you'll be doing in Rimworld and what to expect, but I think I've basically just been listing features. That isn't what a review is to me, but as I said, Rimworld is a hard game to review, and hey, I'm writing as I go here. Perhaps the true best way to review the game is to ask a different question. Instead of trying to describe how it plays and whether or not that is fun, I'll instead try to answer the question of how successful it is as a story generator. One thing to understand is that Rimworld doesn't tell cohesive stories and through lines, and the stories it does tell are more prompts than anything. You can just play this game on max speed, watching your little dudes run around, and have no idea of all the small details going on. You need to slow down and get inquisitive, using your imagination to fill in the gaps. Maybe you're getting raided and have set up your pawns in their defensive formation. What are they feeling? Well, we can go into their needs tab and see what's on their mind. They're happy with their impressive bedroom, but they're upset that their current lover rebuffed their marriage proposal. It's snowing outside, but they don't feel the cold as they're wearing a muffalo wool parka knitted by their late parent. With their masterwork bolt-action rifle aimed and ready, the freshly rejected pawn feels like they have nothing to lose. They manage to take a shot, killing one of the raiders, but at the same time, a Molotov cocktail explodes next to our pawn, leaving them down on the ground screaming in pain, burning to a crisp. Nearby, a hungry red fox hears the cries, moseys on over, and eats what's left of our colonist. I embellished the hell out of that story, but it is what happened, and all of the little details I threw in are also found there in the game. While not always this exciting, these moments are constantly happening in Rimworld. Systems upon systems constantly bumping up onto each other that create highly missable but highly detailed moments that you can superimpose your imagination onto. This bleeds into the graphical design as well. As you probably noticed by now, it's pretty minimalist. Walking a careful balance between making sure everything is readable, but not so detailed that it takes away the need for any imagination. Personally, I think the game looks fantastic. When I first played Rimworld a few years back, it really opened my eyes to the idea that amazing graphics oftentimes come at the cost of gameplay complexity. Games are made to be sold, and generally speaking, it's a lot easier to show off nice graphics in a trailer than it is deep gameplay mechanics that take time to explain. Hell, even in this video I'm worried because I feel like all I've done is describe things while little dudes just bob around as I stare at them intently. It makes me imagine what, for example, a game like Cyberpunk could have been if they took 20% of focus off graphics and freed up some system and manpower resources for simulation mechanics. This is a long way of saying that Rimworld is the poster boy for balance between graphics and mechanical complexity. To be fair, Dwarf Fortress is even uglier and even more complex. An astonishing game in its own right, but it doesn't quite strike the same balance Rimworld does, even with the gorgeous new Steam edition. Music-wise, and Rimworld is one of my favourite OSTs of all time. It's done by musician Alistair Lindsay, who very kindly does tutorials on how to play the songs on YouTube. The tracks are airy, acoustic, with a bit of sci-fi in a Pink Floyd-inspired kind of way. I've never seen the credits of Rimworld, but I have listened to the song that plays during them, and it makes me tear up every time. When Rimworld comes up, you'll often hear a bunch of meme stuff about the game being a war crime simulator and whatnot. While those things are certainly there, that isn't what Rimworld is about. The Rim is a place of tragedy and triumph, where desperate people do desperate things just to be alive. If you have to harvest some organs or capture some slaves to get there, well, that's part of the story, but it isn't the focus. So this is a game with quite a bit of DLC, and they're all quite hefty in both content and price. All entirely worth it, but none being essential in it to own from the get-go. There is a lot to learn in Rimworld, and it's probably better done without all the added systems on top. By all means, get them all at once if you'd like, but understand it'll probably be a long while until you get a handle on the content. I buy them as they come out, and have enjoyed features of all, but rarely gone deep on them. There's plenty of content in the base game to keep you busy, and that's without even mentioning the modding scene. Oh, the modding scene. If you like mods, or to create them yourself, Rimworld is a dream. There are literally thousands of different mods on the Steam Workshop, ranging from small quality of life mods to complete gameplay overhauls. The sky really is the limit with modding here, and each new DLC released introduces new systems for modders to play with. It is really easy to download and try mods. While none of them are essential, there are some that I'd really rather not play without. While I originally stated that I didn't know who this review was for, I think at the end of the day, it was for me. Rimworld is an amazing game / story generator that I feel such profound enthusiasm for. There is nothing else quite like this game, separating itself from its grandfather Dwarf Fortress in a number of meaningful ways. If this game hooks you, it'll become a forever game. It has for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.